just waiting around for a few more, and then we'll get started. Hi, Chelsea. Hi, Melanie. Hi, Amanda.
Hi.
Now, Melanie and Amanda, you are mentors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to meet you officially. I've heard lots of things about all of you from Patricia when I was her student for a few years, or a couple years. She's amazing. She's helped me a lot with my business and all of that. So I could imagine for her is the same.
Yeah, she's the best.
She is. Now, do you have a lot of bridal, like bridal stylists on your team, or is there like a handful?
No. Yeah, I would. So we used to have a girl that would like, she actually had like a suite like in our strip mall, like a bridal studio. Yeah. So we kind of just gave like all of our business to her, and then I work for her like every once in a while, like I'll assist her. So we don't really have anyone like at our salon, but we just kind of have people that we give like our people to.
Yeah, that's how we've kind of gone into, we started doing it where I was going to start building more of a team, and I had some people that I would use and have like they would assist me for a while. And then just this year we transitioned to where everyone kind of takes on their weddings independently, and it just seemed better and easier that way. It's a lot to book weddings and to plan weddings and all of that. And so I cut down mine a little bit, and I take on my regular, or like I've been taking on my like regular amount that I normally do. And then beyond that, I've just kind of passed them on to stylists within our team, so then they can either help each other out, or they've assisted me too still, but it seems to be easier to work that way rather than like building an entire team.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, I wanted to go over a little bit of, I'm going to show you a couple styles, and then I'm going to also go over a little bit of our like the business side of it. I want to go over building a kit, and then also going into like how I do my booking process and making that a little bit more of a clear system for you. So when you are booking weddings on your own, then you're able to like really have like a system for it and not feel lost. Because I think that's a big part of the bridal business that is really hard for a lot of people, is just keeping everything in order and keeping track of like your booking process. And so I'm going to go over that as well. But with the styles, I pre-curled her just because otherwise we'd been here all day. But I wanted to show the two styles that I feel like are really highly requested right now are a down style with like a middle part and having like the sides pinned back, and then have a soft wave. And then I also wanted to do like a higher like midi style that has a little bit of texture, and that's more of like a full updo. So with her, what I did was I prepped her with a little bit of bedroom hair. You guys use Kevin Murphy, right?
Yeah.
So I love bedroom hair for giving some grit. And when we talk about our product list, a big thing for me is finding the right products in the needs that I want, and not necessarily worrying about like the specific brand. I think a lot of times people will ask bridal stylists like, well, what brand do you use, or what, what products are your favorites? And I think it's not so much about the brand as it is about like what it is that it does. And so being able to have a prep product, and then styling products, and then finished products are going to be key in that. And we'll go over all the different breakdowns of that as well. But having something that, especially as you all know with mannequin hair, they're very silky. So having something that's going to give some sort of grip you know, hold to it, but that still is movable is going to be key for prepping. And then that also can kind of give a little bit of volume. So I also like doing using some sort of texture powder or volumizing powder at the roots and being able to backcomb that area a little bit. But I'm going to quickly just show you. So with this style, I did everything going like all in the same direction. So then when I brush it out, it all falls really softly. And one of my favorite ways to curl for this is like you can just do like a regular curl, or you can do a wrap curl. But one thing that I like to do is actually a mixture of the two. So you're wrapping the hair and then you're pulling it through and you're twisting it at the same time. And then this helps keep the curl really tight and also gives it, when you brush it out, gives it a nice like Hollywood wave look, and it with like those ridges and valleys. And it makes it really like fall really, really nicely with each other. Now that I'm recurling this, of course, it's smoothed down on me. Let's do it again. And then I will typically like squeeze it a little bit just to get that like the heat out of it for a second, and then you can let it fall. And so I typically will curl row by row, all in the same direction up until about here. And then I'll start back combing. And I kept her with a middle part. And so I am going to actually keep the back combing with that, but now I'm going to actually go in and smooth that. But I wanted to give a little bit of volume here, just so it doesn't feel like it's super flat to her head, even with that smooth look. But what's nice is these curls brush out so beautifully and so soft. And then even with the back combing that I have in there, even though I'm brushing like that top layer down, I still have some underneath that I can kind of like pop some pieces up, and that helps give you a little bit more shape and definition for your volume. And then I like to do a lighter hairspray that has a little bit of shine to it. And I'll usually pull these ends together and kind of separate it like that. And then one of my tricks for spraying is I'll actually take the bottle and then I'll press in between these valleys. And that will help kind of smooth that out a little bit too. And pull this apart. And then on the sides, I'll take my comb. And I'll usually do everything that's above the ear, like just a little behind the ear. This I'm going to actually bring back. And if someone wants it really tight over their ear, I'll make sure that's super tight. Otherwise, there are sometimes where people will want to cover their ear a little bit. And so that's like one of the questions I definitely want to ask them is what they prefer. And then I'll do that to the other side as well. Grab my I put my little rubber bands. Oops. See if there's some in there. And then typically with this style, because it's so hard, I've done it in the past where I've just pinned it right here, but that tends to not be tight enough. And so I will actually take a rubber band and tie it behind here. It looks like for some reason we are losing our rubber band. So I'm not going to do that today, but I will just do it with a bobby pin here.
To the other.
And in case that never happened and you don't have bobby pins or you don't have bands, what I did here is I actually twisted underneath and then pinned from both sides. So you're almost like Xing your bobby pins. And then I'll put one up a little bit higher to help hold that really tight. And also on this side. And then if you bring that hair over and just spray. Brush it out again. Then it gives that really modern, like Hollywood, soft Hollywood wave with the middle part that's really slick. You could take a pomade if they have those little baby hairs that are really like hard to hold down. I actually, one of my most recent brides this past weekend did this look and she had some baby hairs around her hairline. So what I did was I actually wet her hair. I blow dried it into place a little bit and then I sprayed it and took another like flat clip and held that in these two spots to hold those into the direction that you want them to fall. And then you can go back in afterwards, take those clips out, smooth that down and spray again. And that will help really hold all of those little baby hairs that people tend to have. But having a hard pomade and everything too, that helps as well hold those in place. Thank you. Okay, so she got me my bands here. So what you would do is just literally clip this up and put a band down. Brush that, and then this will fall over. And then you have the nice easy style. So the biggest key is doing either a wrap curl or a really tight regular curl where you're really curling in those ends. Like I said, my favorite one is doing, you know, bringing it through, holding on to it and just feeding it into the curling iron. That's going to give you the tightest end and not feel like, and it gives it a very even curl overall.
What size curling iron is that?
This is
a prefer.
I prefer 1 inch for this look. And honestly, for people that don't hold well with a curl, I will actually go in and do it with a 3/4 inch. And that seems scary to a lot of people. It seems very small, but it really gives like a good wave. Honestly, I'm someone that doesn't, like my hair doesn't hold a curl and I wrapped mine with a 3/4 inch and brushed it out. And so it gives a really good, hold, especially for people that have really straight hair, really fine hair. Anyone that says my hair doesn't hold a curl, I would go smaller, but typically I start with a 1 inch. Usually during my trials, I will always do their trial with a 1 inch because then I can kind of go from there and say, okay, either we need it looser or we need it tighter. But that's usually my go-to. So I'm going to take this out and show you my updo. Do you have any questions about this style specifically? We're all good? Awesome. So a big thing that I always try to go over in my trials with updos is asking people asking my brides like how much hair they want down in the front. I will actually have them pull out their own hair, and I'll hold it back and just say like, let me see what you're comfortable with. And so they will go through sometimes and pull out a ton. Sometimes it's just a little bit. My go-to spots are like a little bit right here on the bottom, right on like the little ridge in the middle. And then I'll usually grab a little bit right underneath the part. I don't tend to grab right at the part because then that ends up being like that hair tends to fall in their face a bit more. So if you grab the section that's like right underneath, that will frame it really well, but keep it to the side rather than grabbing it right on the top. If they tend to want this heavier, then maybe I will. Sometimes I'll go in and actually grab like the first half an inch or so, especially if they have a lot of face framing. Hers is obviously really long, but even in the trial, I'll talk about that. Like if they don't have a ton of face framing and they're planning to get a haircut, I'll have them, you know, tell their stylist, or if they're with me, I'll go in and cut that to prepare for their style, or we can do it on the day of too. I usually will keep a razor in my kit. And so I have given a lot of people day of haircuts, even bridesmaids. So I tend to pull out the front pieces that I want right away. And the biggest thing that I've learned throughout the years is if the person likes the front of their hair, they don't really care what you do in the back. So if you give them enough volume and enough shape in the front that makes them feel comfortable, then they'll feel comfortable with whatever it is that you do. So that's my hair in the front. And so with this style, I'm actually going to take everything that is like above the ear. I'm going to keep her middle part, but I'm going to bring everything else back. And then I'm going to put it in my hand like I am going to be preparing for a ponytail. But then this is when I actually will go in and loosen their hair a little bit and pull it up to give them some volume and definition. And because I previously had put some back combing in there, it's supporting it really well. I have some of the puff me in there to give it some volume. And then the bedroom hair. And so I'm going to actually loop this through fully like a pony. And then I'm going to take another band. So I'm going to check and make sure that everything looks smooth and soft. A lot of people always want to cover their ears, so I'll always make sure a little bit's like over their ear. And then I'll take another band, and then this is when I don't pull it all the way through. I'll give them this half bun there. And I'm gonna clip this out of the way. And then I'm gonna put another pony right underneath. I always like to use two ponytails because it feels a lot more secure. And if someone has really, really thick hair where it doesn't want to hold the ponytail holders, I will actually take 2 of my clear bands and wrap them within each other so that it creates like a little knot. If you don't have those fancy like rubber band, I don't even know, like they're a band with like a hook on each end. I'm utilizing this kind of in the same way. A lot of times I'll have those in my kit, and then if I run out of them or something, I have to use something else. So I will typically do this. It seems to work exactly the same, and then you're not having to worry about carrying something else extra in your kit. So if you take 2 bands, and can you see that? 2 bands, and then you put 2 bobby pins on the ends, and I will actually go in and exit. So if you pin this, wrap it all the way around really, really tightly, and then pin it again, that will lock this ponytail into place really, really tightly. This is a good one for a good tip for someone that wants a really high ponytail too, because you can go in and use those bobby pins to help like lift that ponytail. And then I'll take another one and pull it through again. Okay, so then this is where, so we have a little bit of that start. So you have the two buns, I guess you can call them. And this is where you can start to kind of play. So depending on how you want the direction, I try to do them a little bit more vertically, and I'll pull them out. And then I start, and I always keep my bobby pins closed for this. And I will literally just start pulling pieces closer to the scalp here and pinning it into place. So you're like spreading out that bun. A lot of times what I'll do is use my bobby pin like you would like a sewing needle too, and I'll actually weave it into the hair, and that will help hold a lot more hair into place. And if you go inside and kind of weave it back and forth and then pull, it'll give you a little bit more hold. And then I'm going to take my ends, and I'm actually going to create a little bit of a rope braid. I'm going to spin her a little bit here. So if you take 2 strands, if you don't know how to do rope braid, these are my favorite braids for updos, because a lot of times people don't want to braid, but this is going to give you that twisted look, but it still creates definition without having to go in and put a million curls in. So you take it and you wrap it, and then you twist it going in the opposite direction. Then you're turning then you're wrapping the 2 strands. And then I always will pull them out, give a little bit of spray if you feel like it's too silky. And then you can wrap them into place here. Smooth that out a little bit. And now that I have that somewhat in place, I'm going to start working with this one, and then we'll kind of intertwine the two together. And if you ever feel like you're pulling pieces apart and they're not staying in the place that you want to, if you use a little bit of hairspray, that will help kind of fill in between the hairs and like give it a little bit more grip to work with. And then with this one, do the same thing, a little bit of a rope braid. Rope braids are my favorite too if I'm doing like a half up style and they want just like a little bit of definition in the back or something twisted. I will usually do some sort of rope braid. And anywhere I'm holding my fingers, that's where I usually will put a pin. Get some ends out. A lot of these styles, they tend to be a little bit more loose and free. And so if you ever feel like you have an end and it's like sticking out, you can just take your pin, pull it back a little bit and kind of redirect it so then it sits a little bit more where you want it to. Or if you feel like you have a flat area where it doesn't have a lot of definition or like just texture to it, what I'll do sometimes in these flat areas is literally stick a pin right in the middle of it, press it really, really deep, and then it'll start to break that up a little. And then you just add a little spray. Pull out some pieces if you feel like you want a little bit more softness. This one was a little too long, so then I just put it in, twist it up, and pop it underneath. But there's the updo. And you have the pieces all around the face. How do you guys like that?
Yeah, I really like that. I feel like it's like very secure, but it's still kind of like textured and like loose too. Like I feel like that's like what everyone wants right now.
Yes. And you can do, depending on how thick their hair is or how long their hair is, you can do like either like 3 ponytails or keep the 2 and maybe not do a half bun or like just keep the ponytail itself and do a rope braid and twist those around if their hair is a little shorter. Ideally, obviously, if their hair is long enough to have the half in there, that helps give a little bit more like substance and volume. But the nice thing is you could like make this really, really loose and textured if you pull pieces out. That's a big part of a lot of the looks right now, like going back in and actually like pulling out like around the crown area or around the face. That helps really like loosen that style a lot more. It gives it some good volume. So those are my 2 looks for each day.
So
Did you
fun.
have any questions about that one at all?
I don't think so.
Awesome. That one's pretty self-explanatory, and it's one of those where if you have their hair prepped really well, like, you know, for someone that has really straight hair, obviously I'll want to at least curl the ends, but with this, you don't even necessarily have to have them super curled. Like that's a big thing about updos. I think that started saving me a lot of times. I used to curl like literally every strand. And now if I know that I'm really just needing those curls to kind of fall into place a little bit, like on the ends, I will just go in and do a quick curl on the end and maybe a little bit through the top to give it some lift. But I'm not spending a ton of time curling a lot of people anymore. But just prepping their hair well enough to give them that volume and that shape. And then, yeah, like getting their ends to where you want them. You could do this style pretty much with smooth hair, with straight hair, and then go back in and just curl the pieces that are maybe sticking out. The nice thing with the rope braids is that they add dimension to it, to where even if you did a rope braid on straight hair, it'll actually look like it is a little bit curled because you're putting things in different directions. And so, yeah, that's a good time saver.
Yeah, I love this one too, because it looks so intricate, but it took you like all of 10 minutes to get it in place. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. This is one of my favorite ones now. And I think the more and more that I do them, I feel like I see them more too. Like, so now that we've done this today, you're probably going to see on Instagram, like, oh, that's that style. Oh, that's that. Like, and you can kind of tell sometimes if they are like two ponytails together, or if it's three, or if it, maybe it's just a lot of curls that they literally will like hold up and pin. But giving some sort of structure with the ponytail, I think helps also give you some volume, because it holds the hair into one place and then you can lift the volume out from there. So, okay, let me grab my stool. Okay, so I wanted to go over, I know they sent you the PDF, and if you, I believe she also said it's in the chat too. So if you wanted to take a look at the PDF that I have for you, or you can look at it later. I wanted to send it over because it has my whole like section on building a kit. And then I also just put in like the first page of my booking process too. So a big thing with building a kit, my list is going to look really long to you. Like when you see it, you're going to be like, I need all these things. And you really don't. This is a general kit a general supply list that I put down, because it's all the things that, for the most part, that I've seen other people use or that I've used myself. But a big thing is like, within each of those categories, finding your favorites and making sure that you always have those. My kit over the years was really big. And then it's also gotten to a point where I realize that I'm carrying a lot of things around and I'm only using possibly even half of it, or maybe even less. So, trying out a lot of things at first is going to be great, but then, being honest with yourself and saying, okay, this is what I really use, that's going to help save you in the long run, because you're not carrying around like this giant kit either. So finding the things that you like is going to be key. But typically I like in my kit, I love like a paddle brush or like a wet brush that just is like regular bristles. And then I also love having a brush that has boar bristles inside of it. This one's actually a Bellamy brush. There's a lot of different brands that have it. I've loved all the different brands that I've tried. The biggest thing is having like 2 layers of bristles. So you have the fine bristles and then you have the boar bristles inside. And the boar bristles actually smooth out the hair a bit. So if you are smoothing out an updo or anything, if you have like the finer bristles on the outside, that will help get through the top layer of your back combing. And then the boar bristles inside of it will actually help smooth that out a little bit more, but still giving some definition to it. Now with a regular wet brush, what's nice is that these are really good for brushing out a style. The boar bristles almost too fine, so it would actually brush out the curl a little bit too much, where when you have a bit more of a wider bristle, that will help brush out something nicely without breaking apart the curls too much to where it just straightens them out. Then I typically like, my favorite comb is like the old combs with the pick on the end. This is the comb that I feel like a lot of like older stylists will use for doing like a roller set or something, because they'll back comb and then they'll smooth this out. But this is perfect for updos because you can use the pick on the end to really help like brush out things, or to get any sort of, you know, if you've done an updo where you're back combing a ton and then you have all of that, like that teasing underneath, and then you're wanting to kind of smooth out the top without getting like the teasing completely gone, then that's when you can use the pick. I love it for even defining things like in an updo. If I know, okay, this direction's going this way, I'll actually, you know, like use my comb in that direction too. I utilize this probably the most. I do like a tail comb. We have one that's like a plastic tail comb or a metal tail comb. This one is nice because it actually has like 3 layers of bristles. This is really helpful for back combing and even smoothing and all of that. And then finding your clips that you like, finding your bobby pins that you like. My favorite are the Meta Grip. They're hard to find, it seems like lately. I think everyone knows now that those ones are the best. They hold the best. I typically I can find them sometimes at Cosmoprof, sometimes at on Amazon. It seems like the bronze color for some reason is like really hard. So when you do find it, buy a lot of it, so then you have it for the season. I try to keep in stock of those. That brand of bobby pins is my absolute favorite. And then for really thick hair, I love the spiral pins. If you haven't ever seen those, they're great for buns, and they're great for just holding really, really thick hair, because sometimes the regular straight bobby pins, those just want to like if you find you do a trial or something and the bobby pins are just like popping out of the person's head, the spiral ones are really great. They're a little bit more expensive for not very many, but you really don't need to use very many for a style. And so if you have at least some of those hanging around, sometimes they are great in those situations. And then having like larger hairpins are great for you know, for styling, but then also for securing a veil, and having elastics and hair ties and all of that is wonderful too. I typically keep either donuts, or sometimes I'll have them already pre-cut. I'll use the donuts if I'm needing to add needing to add more volume to a bun. But most of the time when I'm using these, I will actually cut them apart and break away like the mesh, and I'll cut like small pieces of mesh and I'll utilize those within an updo. So like for someone like her, if she had a little bit shorter hair, I could actually go in, do the ponytail and put some pieces of mesh around, and I would just pin them in like normal. And then I would take the hair and actually wrap around those pieces. And I prefer cutting it up and just like placing them where I need to, because then it's not so perfect. Sometimes if I put like a full donut into these ponytails, I think it would either make it too big or it would make it too perfectly defined as like a ballerina bun. So we don't want to necessarily always have that look. And so cutting them apart and utilizing them in little pieces is really, really helpful. And then typically for curling irons, having a variety, like I said, I actually do keep all 3 sizes in my kit, but typically the ones that I pull out setting up is my 1 inch or my 3/4 inch. And then every once in a while I'll use a 1 1/4, but I find that unless their hair holds really, really, really well with curls, like it's not very, very often that I gravitate towards that one, because if for a all day style, I would typically want to do a little bit tighter so then it lasts. And then I always keep like a 1 inch flat iron, but then I also keep a tiny, one of the mini tiny irons, and they are like, I think like a 1/2 inch plate or so. And I love those probably more than my regular one during bridal season, because I use those a lot around the face. I use them to just to help smooth out all of the baby hairs that are even underneath on their neck. I'll use my like large flat iron sometimes to curl or to smooth out someone that maybe has, you know, a lot of like kinky wave into it. But typically I would rather actually go in, spray them a little bit, and then blow dry them out and smooth them that way, and then go back in with my little mini flat iron and just like smooth out the little baby hairs when I need to. I tend to get a better long lasting style that way than going in and flat ironing them completely. And so I put on here wavers and crimpers. I personally don't keep the waver in my kit. I feel like sometimes they just take too long. I love the look of it, but I can also get that same look with an iron if I'm wrapping the hair that way. The wavers are really nice though, if you know that someone's wanting that specific look. It just takes a little bit longer. The mini crimpers are awesome to tap around like the root, especially if someone has really fine straight hair and they don't get a lot of volume. Having a mini crimper is really great to just like tap in some sections right around the root area just to help give you some lift. And then with thermal setting, I personally don't keep any rollers in my kit, but I have worked with stylists that do and love them. So if you tend to like that look and like to have them around, again, I can get that same rollered look with setting with my curling iron. But if you tend to like the thermal rollers or the Velcro rollers, those are great to have as well. And then I just have a list of miscellaneous items. These are all things that are just suggestions of things to have around. I typically have at least a couple hot pads with me. I have towels. I always will have like a water bottle with me if I do need to spray and like blow dry them. I usually will keep like a round brush or something, like a kind of like a medium sized round brush in my kit. Like I said before, I have a razor with me, so then if I need to cut any pieces, then that's helpful as well. I typically keep a chair with me. I always have one that I had purchased off of Amazon, and it actually folds up and has a handle on it. It's really easy to carry. And that's really been such a game changer, because then I know wherever I walk into or wherever I'm doing hair, I do a lot of on location hair. And then I know that I have like a comfortable chair at the height that I want it, because a lot of times I've done weddings where they're like, oh, I'll give you a stool. And it's just too high for me, and I'm pretty tall. So having a chair at a good height is really, really helpful. Let me grab a drink of water. Okay, so going into product list, I really wanted to break this up in a way. I did give some suggestions. So there's like the product brand recommendations that I have used that I like. And I do have links on both pages on my supply list and my product recommendations. Like I have an Amazon list for all of the supplies that I have purchased off of Amazon, and it's written on these lists. If you have any questions or are trying to find them somewhere, you can look there. But a big thing with product is really finding the right products for the use that you're like looking for. So having some prep products, having some styling products, and having some finish. And so a big thing is really being able to look at the hair that you're starting with and figure out what needs you have. So you may have someone that has really coarse, curly, kind of wavy, kinky hair that's going to want a really smooth look. Well, with that, you're going to need something that is probably, you know, if they're wanting more smoothing products, you're going to need to prep them with something that's going to have maybe a little bit more oil and shine to it if they tend to have drier, you know, kind of matte finished hair. And then you also may want something that's going to help smooth a little bit more, give it everything a little bit more definition. Or you may have someone that has really straight fine hair and you're going to need some volume product, whether it's like having a blow dryer is helpful if you are maybe spraying in like a quick like root volume spray. You can go in and blow dry that. Did you have a question, Amanda?
Yeah, I had a quick question. Do you have like, a way you tell them to come in? Like, do you recommend, like, before, like, you tell all the bridesmaids, like, come in with your hair clean and dry and smooth? Or do you just kind of like, smooth it out when they get there?
Perfect world, they would follow my directions, and yes, I usually send them, and I'll talk about it a little bit in my booking process, but I actually send them over a PDF that states like all of my requirements. So it'll say with whether you have curly hair, I may have them, if they're wanting to keep a curly style, I'll actually have them prep their hair how they would normally wear it curly. And then I can go in and define curls from there. Or if they're wanting it a smooth hair, and then I would need them to actually go in and blow dry their hair smooth, you know, or maybe someone has like straight hair and they just are wanting it curled and everything like that. I write in there too, not to have it flat ironed, because sometimes when they go in and flat iron it and they're wanting curls after or something, it's hard for me to go back in and put curl back in there. So I say no flat ironing. And then, style it how you would generally want to wear it. If it is going to be a little bit smoother, have it smooth. If you're going to wear it curly, like naturally curly, have it fully dry in your ways that you would want to style your curls, and then I'll define it on top of that. And I creating a PDF is nice because I will actually send it to the bride like weeks before their wedding day, and I'll have her like just screenshot it off of her phone and send it to her girls. And so rather than just having it in an email, I think it stands apart a little bit more for them, or they can save the image or something and put it in there. So yeah, perfect world, most people will come with it dry, but sometimes they don't. If I catch them ahead of time, I will hand them my blow dryer if they don't have one, and I'll ask them to blow dry their hair. And if they sit in my chair and they're a little wet still, I'll go in and blow dry it. But you know, but for the most part, I'm not prepping from wet hair or anything like that. Most of the time they come in pretty smooth, but every once in a while you still have you still have someone that maybe has like that really coarse hair and they've styled it as smooth as they can get it, but you're needing to go back in and like smooth it a little bit more, or define their curls a little bit more, or add more volume. And so being able to kind of figure out what you need in those cases to prep is helpful, because then if you prep them well, then you don't have to spray every single curl that you're going in and doing, or every move that you make. If you can prep their hair really well to give them that texture and grip that they need, then you can go back in and just curl away, or prep how you need to, or style how you need to, and maybe add a little bit of hairspray for hold, or maybe a little bit of pomade or something to define some curls, or define some of these like flyaway pieces. If this is like too frizzy, you can go in with like a little bit of like a smoothing cream or something to define that. And then obviously at the very end, then you can either, spray it with the really, really strong hairspray, or a medium hold, depending on if they're wearing their hair just like a natural curl and they don't want a ton of spray. And then I usually will finish with like some sort of shine spray, and then having some sort of cream or pomade or anything to get like your flyaways and all of that gone. So I listed my brand recommendations of things that I use as kind of a variety of things. And then I actually went in and created a list underneath each of like the prep, style, and finish, under each of the needs that you have. So like for volumizing spray, for a mousse or heat protectant, I gave you some suggestions from the brands that I've worked with that I like. And so you can look at it there. Okay, so we have about 10 more minutes, and I wanted to go over our booking process. And this is something that I have worked with I've solidified this process at least I've utilized it probably the last like 4 years or so. And having an outline for your booking process and creating a checklist is going to be like the best thing that you can do for keeping your weddings organized, because it's really hard to kind of figure out, especially if you're, working up to 20, 40, 50 weddings, depending on how many ever you do. Even 10 is a lot to keep track of. And so being able to have an outline of the process is extremely, extremely helpful, because you can then go back and say, okay, this person's in this place in the process. And so I gave you a little bit of a checklist. I actually I, for the most part, will use a program called HoneyBook, and that does help me keep all of my projects in one place. And I actually put this outline into their system, so then it kind of tracks it with me. It's a really good like project management app or program. But even if you don't utilize that, because it does cost a little bit of money every year, but even if you're wanting to keep track of the 5 to 10 weddings that you do every year, if you create, whether it's a manual list that you just have on a piece of paper with your bride's names on it and you can check off where they're at, or if you create a Google sheet or something, that's what I have done. Even with HoneyBook, I have a Google sheet that I will actually like work with alongside, where I will manually put in like all of my stages that they're in, and I will put the bride's names down, and then I will check off like where they're at. And then I also have a list that has all of their information. So I found with even using a project manager or app or program, it still was hard to like visualize my whole year in one place. And so, especially if I'm utilizing extra people, I wanted a place to where I can put all of their information in one spot. I can, keep track of what their phone number is, what their wedding date is, how many people they have, what time they're going, what time we need to be there, where their venue is going to be. I will actually put in there like what stylists are working with me. I'll put in whether or not they are using another makeup artist, or I'll get their information. I usually will get the photographer's information too, and whether or not we can have permission to share images later. Most of the time people say yes, but every once in a while someone will say no. And so it's good to have that and give them that security of trust that you're not going to share everything if they request not to. And so having all those things in one place is really, really key to keeping everything organized. And so my booking process outline sheet, I will actually, everything that's bold, I will actually create like a little column for, and then I can do like a check, like, okay, they've gone through the contact form, they've gone through the brochure, I've followed up with them, and then you can see where everyone is at. So really quickly through this. I'm going to kind of just speed through this, but if you have any questions, let me know. I start with, I have a contact form on my website that they reach out to me, and it automatically gets put into HoneyBook, which is awesome. But what's nice is then I have a brochure that I can email to them. And so I send over my brochure that has literally all of my information. And so with my bridal guide, I have my pricing. I have information about what the difference is of being on location or being in the salon or in my bridal suite. I give information on my general timing for the day of like per service. So then they have an understanding of how much time I would need. I do offer like an hourly rate for concierge. And so that would be if someone wanted to hire me to stick around for a few hours to maybe change their style or do touch-ups or, put in their veil or something, and it's not, and I'm already done with all of my bridal party, I do an hourly rate on top of that. And so then they would, pay that rate until my time was done. And so that has been really nice. People don't utilize that very often, but every once in a while you'll get someone that's like, I want to wear my hair down for the ceremony, but they want to put it up for the reception. And then I have my trial info in there. And then my information about my deposits, and then also any gratuity information. I am based off of in the salon, we are gratuity free, and so I'm actually transferring all of that into the bridal world, and it is really nice because I think on the day of the wedding, I actually have been taking a deposit a couple weeks beforehand, or taking the final payment a couple weeks beforehand. And so it's nice because no money is exchanged on the day of, and has made it so much smoother and easier, and people aren't like awkwardly handing you like money and not knowing how much to give. And so being able to like have that all streamlined and given beforehand is amazing. And then I have on there just like, are you interested? Okay, what now? What's the next step? And so typically at that point, if they are interested, they will put down a deposit, and that will lock them into their day. Once we've sent that, and if they haven't contacted you in a little while after you've sent your brochure, you can do a follow-up email. And then once they are interested, you can send them over a proposal, and that will kind of lay out like, okay, these are the services that you're requesting. This is how much it would be. And then I will also add like what that would look like in my payment plan. So my payment plan, I make it very easy. They put down $100 to hold their day. I've done more. There was like 1 year where I tried to do like 50% down, but I just felt like that was a lot of money that was just kind of sitting, and I just hate spending money that's not being made yet. And so, and I hate having to hold on to it for sometimes, a year or two, like if they're booking way in advance. And so I typically I don't have very many people ever cancel. So like, I can think of like out of the 15 years I've done it, maybe like 2 people that have had to cancel their weddings. And both of them, I feel like it was a situation where they're like, keep the deposit, it's whatever. Like, so I think the $100 is fine. I feel like at least some money is exchanged to hold that day. And then, well, actually I said $100, but actually this year I did up it to the cost of at least my bridal service. So then at least that's being covered to hold that day, and then you can go from there. And then my final payment is due 2 weeks before their wedding date. And then I feel like that has been a good time, because I think it is just enough before that they can kind of tie their loose ends, and they're not feeling stressed. If it's like a week before, they're usually like in last minute planning mode, and they kind of forget about that stuff. And so they will get it to you in a good order. So I listed out here some information I put in my contract. And then I go through if they, you know, I will usually follow up with them if they don't reach out for like 2 weeks or so. And then I'll follow up with them and say, hey, I just wanted to see, I know I sent over the proposal and contract. Are we still moving forward? You know, and setting up a nice follow-up, I think, is just good reminders sometimes for people, just to kind of keep them in line. And once they've signed their contract, their deposits paid, then I will send them over my bridal trial information. And whether they're booking, like I said, sometimes people may book a year in advance or more, like 2 years in advance sometimes. And so I usually will recommend a bridal trial to be done within 2 months of their wedding. Every once in a while, I'll get one that wants it sooner, and that's fine. I will do it. But I always try to get it as, you know, as close to the day as I can. And then once they come to their bridal trial, I will talk over literally everything. I book my trials for 2 hours. I've tried to do them less. I like the extra time. I'll do a couple styles for them. I'll talk over any questions, any details that they are needing for their day. And then after that, we'll nail down like final details. Like, this is your final location, your final time frame that we need, your total number of people, like all of that. I try to do at least a couple months before the wedding. And so then and then I'll send them like, okay, this is your final invoice, all of the details, here it is. And then that's when they will be prepared to make their final payment. Once their final payment is paid, then I will send over like the last minute, like, here's all the things that we need to be prepared for your day of. And that's when I go in and we'll send them like the PDF for their like hair prep. Like, what do we want your hair to look like? I'll also have them come in, make sure that they know to wear like a looser neck, whether it's like a button-up shirt or like a large tank top or something that they can get over their hair. And then if you do makeup too, you can always have them like when we've had makeup artists work with us, we'll add that into you know, to come with like a clean face and, you know, clean moisturized face. And so going from there, then obviously you're at the day of. And so once you perform their wedding, I try to arrive early. I try to like just make sure that I'm, you know, very professional. Like anyone that's working with me, we try to always be very like simply dressed. I don't try to dress up too much, because most of the time everyone that you're like, you know, doing hair for, they're like either in like a robe or pajamas or casual. And so if you come in like super dressed up, I think that you know, I think it just makes them feel a little bit more intimidated. And so I try to dress a little bit more comfortable and casual, and then that helps them feel comfortable as well. And so after the wedding, I'll usually give a couple weeks or a few weeks, and I'll send them a follow-up email. And then that's when it's kind of like when my service is fully completed with them. I'll, you know, usually in that email, just thank them for letting me be a part of their day. I'll send them any other like information. Sometimes they'll ask for like product, like maybe a girl on their bridal party will be like, what was that spray that you use? So sometimes I'll like send a link in that email, and then I'll usually have a link to my like Google review page as well, or my wedding page or whatever, to where they can write a review. And then I'll always include in there like to send me photos, and I'd love to see their photos. And so then they can email me back and send me those when they're ready. And so yeah, so that is my full process. It does seem like a lot, and it is, but it also is nice to have it all in one place now. And hopefully that will help you guys keep in order a little bit more and just be able to make your system of your booking process a lot smoother. So yeah. So does anyone have any questions about the booking process in general?
I have one real quick. You
Yeah.
might have said it, but I might have missed it. How long do you like allot for like per bridesmaid?
So for myself, I would typically say a half an hour for a bridesmaid and 20 minutes for like a short, like a super short style. And then I'll do like an hour for a bride. Now, if I'm booking a bridal party and I'm going to have a second person, then I will actually give them, because if they're taking half of the people, I want to make sure that our timing is accurate. And I'm a little bit quicker than most of the people that I work with. And so I will actually do an hour for a bride and then 45 minutes for like 40 to 45 minutes for brides, like anyone else. And then that usually will give us enough buffer time, especially if I'm bringing a second person, that means it's a large party. And so that's when I usually want to have that time to give some buffer. And then I always tell them, I always tell the bride, like if they come to me and say, okay, I need to be done by 12:30, and I'll say, okay, is that when you are taking pictures, or is that when you're like gonna start getting dressed? And if they're like, well, that's when my photographer told me to be ready by, then I say, okay, let's get you done by 11:30. And so I always try to do like an hour before, so then we know that there's like enough time in general to do any touch-ups or any buffer or anything like that to have them prepared.
Do you share your like schedule with the makeup artist if it's like someone that you don't normally work with, so you guys can like try to coordinate, or do you kind of figure that out when you get there?
So I've done it a few different ways. I had a year where I created a schedule for everyone, and I realized that by the end of that year, I was like, I don't think anyone went on that schedule. So what I started doing was I just would give them like a blank schedule, and I'd say, these are my time slots. I always put the bride in the middle. I prefer them to be done in the middle, because then they have enough time. I love when I can see them wear their style a little bit, because if there's anything that I need to touch up, then I can do that. And I always hate when the bride prefers to be at the end, because I think that they end up just feeling stressed. Like once they're the last person, you feel like you're rushing through.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I always put them in the middle. I will typically ask or have them ask their makeup artist if they have a preference of whether or not they go first for makeup or second. I don't have any preference over that. And so I think it's usually up to the makeup artist. But then, yeah, if it is an artist that I haven't worked with, or even if I have, I will just say like, my preference is for her to be in the middle. You can put anyone else wherever. And so I've typically found that if I just say, hey, I'm going to be here at this time, the bride's at this time, and I'm going to be out at this time, or starting to do touch-ups or whatever, fill it in, then I'll just take whoever's available for the most part. And I think that works out the best way for me. So yeah. Is there any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I put on the PDF on like I think on like the second page and the last page, I have my information on there, with my email, with my Instagrams and everything too. The Collectively Mel one is my personal one. And then I do have Bridal Hair Business page as well. And so you can contact me through either of those if you have any questions. And then I'm actually rolling out a bridal hair business course. It's not going to be any styling or anything, but it's going to be going through like if someone's wanting to start like a bridal business, then I am rolling out a course in October, and it's a 4-month course. And you could do it. You could even just look at, I have the information of what each month will be if you're interested in just month 3 or something, then you can sign up just for that, like just for 1 month. And I have it either where you can do it self-paced, where it's all online, or you can actually have me walk through things with you and do some coaching calls with you too. And so, yeah, if anyone has any interest in building a bridal business, I would love to talk with you. So, but otherwise, thank you so much for having me. And it was great talking with you all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
This
you
was a
for
great
doing that.
class.
Yeah, good. I'm so glad. Hopefully you
Yes,
learned
thank you so
something.
much.
So yeah, of course. All right. Well, have a wonderful day.
Bye.